Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday service of Now Creations. Just a joy to be with all of you here this morning. Just so nice to be content in your presence. Nice to be with each other. Just one comment I want to make before we begin today, and that is that I hope you'll join us for our open forum tonight from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Karen O'Brien Pugh will be giving a testimony, and then we'll be sharing in response to that. If you just go to our website and simply click on Study Groups and scroll down to Open Forum, 6 o'clock tonight, please join us. Let me also say what a continuing joy it is for me to greet you in these weekly teachings. I've been especially inspired by two things, actually quite impressed by two things. The first one is simply the daily acts of kindness that so many of you are doing in your personal lives. It's just such a joy to see you happier, to see yourself maybe more pleased with yourself, and to really know that you're growing in the awareness. It's wonderful. And the second is the growth that so many of you have showed in exhibiting your understanding of our recent teachings on independency. I think I can happily say so many of you just get it. You understand. You're growing in conscious awareness. Because of these 2 points, your goodness and your expanding awareness, I now want to present a teaching that I know many of you have had on your mind, and also many of you are personally involved with, namely physical death. The title of today's teaching, therefore, is Physical Death, the First Alternative. I mentioned the first alternative because there will be more teachings, more things are necessary to explain physical death. But let's at least begin with the first one. As I begin this sharing with you, may I make these two opening comments. First and foremost, I am quite aware that many of you are now dealing with issues concerning physical death. And I know sometimes these are uncomfortable things that are very, very important for us to be able to understand a little more clearly. While I'm aware of these situations, I hope that the teachings will provide a guidance for you. Although at the moment, certainly warm embraces and loving support are most what is needed. And secondly, I know also that many of you are dealing with health issues, and sometimes they just seem to be overwhelming. I feel that these teachings might be very helpful to you as well, especially in helping you to overcome fear and worry. Being quite aware of these 2 points, may I begin with a brief introduction and then focus on a saying that needs to be clarified, and then proceed to present 2 alternative views of physical death, one today and one next week. Although they are really complementary, and they do present the fullest view of life. One last thing. I am sharing these views with you because I personally believe them to be true. Yet you know where you are in your beliefs. So please accept these teachings as possible directions to assist your beliefs. I am happy to share them without ever trying to tell you what to believe. Let's begin. And let's begin with 2 general facts. The first one is that whether in a beauty salon or in a barbershop, the 2 topics usually to be avoided were considered to be politics and religion. Additionally, I think there's really a third, and that is the topic of physical death, because there are so many different beliefs, but also perhaps maybe that a customer might be experiencing a recent death of a family member or friend. A second fact. To those of you who continue to get newspapers, the obituary section is really read by many. People want to know who might have passed, often recalling schoolmates or family and friends that we have known, and perhaps maybe wanting to say a prayer for them or recalling a memory that we have shared with them. It's just what many of us do. I do the very same thing. Just recently, reading the obituary of my former high school basketball coach, for whom it was nice for me to say a prayer and to recall our memories back then. I mention these things because these are things we do, sometimes even unconsciously, because physical death of another also influences our own thoughts. There's one more thing that needs clarified before we continue, and this clarification will apply to the two alternatives to physical death that I will present in these teachings. The statement that needs corrected is the following one. Many people believe, or at least say, that death is the opposite of life. While I understand what this statement implies in ordinary daily living, it really is very limited and untrue. Death is the opposite of life needs to be corrected to death is the opposite of birth. Death is the opposite of birth, not of life. When an obituary is given, it is always from the date of birth to the date of death. Very important for us to understand this. Death is the opposite of birth, not of life. This clear understanding then enables us to have clear alternatives as to physical death. I'm going to present the first one today, and it is the more traditional religious view of death. Although the second alternative, namely how the soul responds to death, is complementary, it just adds more things. So let's begin first of all with the traditional religious view of death. In the traditional religious view of death, death is an event. Death is an event that happens to you. Death is an event that happens to you. The event is usually unwanted, it is unwelcomed, and often unpredictable. We all have experienced such events, something where maybe someone passes unexpectedly, or maybe there was an accident, or maybe a cancer is discovered in a person. The initial response, of course, is to be very supportive to family and friends. But even when someone is living to a ripe old age, even at those moments, death is still very uncomfortable, and we still need those hugs and embraces from our families and our friends. To such an event, whether predictable or sudden, traditional religion often presents a very comforting view. Although it does not take away the present and future aspects of loss, it at least offers a sense of comfort, a little bit of some release. Such a traditional religious view would represent some of the following considerations. The first one, and the most important one, that there is an eternal loving presence, namely God, that welcomes the soul back to its initial starting point with the divine in heaven. The notion that the soul has gone back home. The soul has returned to God. And the soul is now at peace, especially if there's been a long, lingering illness. And even if you would embrace reincarnation, You realize, in a sense, that the soul has simply completed its purpose here on earth and has now moving on to continue its journey. Now again, while this view does not take away all of the pain of separation, it at least offers a strong consolation in light of the next point. The next point, the second one, is twofold. First, one can be in contact with that soul. One can be in contact with that soul that has passed by simply focusing your attention on their mental, emotional energy and invite them to respond to your mental, emotional energy. Such forms of communication, mental, emotional energy of one to another, happen quite often when lights begin to flicker, a rainbow appears in the sky, or a fragrance seems to be smelled. It truly is comforting to receive signs. So comforting to receive signs. These signs are so helpful because they bring such consolation to us who are grieving. And then the second point fits in very nicely. It includes not only communication with those who are no longer physically present, but with that comes the realization that sometime we too will pass. And in this passing, we will be able to see our loved ones again. And what a reunion it will be. No longer burdened by the heaviness of the body and the attendant duties of the world, the reunited souls can be in such a loving embrace. Whether it be with a parent, with a spouse, a child, a friend, or might I even say with pets, who have been such wonderful companions, especially when a person has lost their companion. The second point easily leads to the third point that religions provide, and that third point is the realization. It's the realization that all humans are simply passing through the material world. We are here for a time, for an interim. We clearly begin to understand that the earth is not a permanent retirement center. As clearly as we know this, we often sometimes forget that life in the body is only temporary. And many, many religions will add that when the soul has finished its time here, when it has completed its purpose, that it will return home. While this return home doesn't take away all of the pain, and there is still that lingering sense of loss, at least it helps. And then a family will usually say something, well, that's just the way life is. What are you going to do? And you just have to deal with it. When it's your time to go, it's your time to go. There's nothing that can be done. Look forward to heaven. Look forward to the future. This view that death happens to you is pretty much the accepted view of life. I'll just say it again. This view that death is something that happens to you is pretty much the accepted view of life. And of course, places one's hope on a future life. Even though you don't understand it totally, there's just that hope that, well, something more is coming when we leave the body. Such a view has a lot of support, as you might note, and a very important support it is. In almost all religions, There is the notion of a future life that helps to comfort people, console them in their present loss. A few examples. For most people in Western culture, there is the Easter celebration of the resurrection of Jesus. The resurrection of Jesus. It's the cornerstone belief of Christianity and has offered comfort from the early Christian martyrs to present-day believers. There is just a new life that is coming. Truly, and truly, there is something within us that really is kind of aware of that. We kind of feel that presence within us is yearning for something more, so that when we leave here on the earth, we can happily embrace a future life. There are many other religions that hold the same basic view, certainly Judaism and Islam, but even Hinduism and Buddhism and Taoism, they hold similar beliefs, even though they also teach the doctrine of reincarnations. Their beliefs very clearly are that souls are passing through, and that there will be a future glory, once we get off this wheel of suffering. There's an awful lot of present-day writers and experiences that fit into this notion that the future will give us a consolation for a present-day loss, just to name a few. Some of you have read the book by Eben Alexander, a near-death experience book called Proof of Heaven, where he simply gives a traditional religious interpretation, or at least one that fits into traditional religion, in the sense that death is not to be feared. There is a glorious future to come. Robert Monroe, in his book Ultimate Journey, also talks about the notion that we are so much more than our physical bodies, that we really are eternal souls, and that physical death is simply the road to something more. And then, of course, there are the many psychics and mediums that people consult because they believe in the future view of life. Such readings can be extremely helpful in eliciting peace for those that have passed, as well as for those of us who remain. We need comfort. It helps so much. This is the traditional religious view, which sees death as an event that happens to us. In conclusion to this first teaching, many people simply see death as a mystery of life. Never sure when it might be coming, but always hoping for the best. While this traditional religious viewpoint is very helpful to many and is quite consoling, there still is that sense of loss for those who are passing reluctantly and for those of us who remain with sadness. So is there another realistic viewpoint? Notice that I said another realistic viewpoint. I believe there is. I will be explaining this other viewpoint in next week's teaching entitled Physical Death, a Second Alternative, the Soul's Response to Life. Until then, I simply encourage you to reflect on today's teaching and to realize the truth that it clearly teaches, namely that physical death is a stepping stone to greater life, a continuation in the soul's journey. And might I say, with so much more to come. With this view in mind, let me now take you into meditation, reflecting on this notion of death and seeing what it might hold for us and for our loved ones. Let's begin as we normally do by simply taking a moment to allow our breath to settle us, just breathing in and breathing out, and allowing your body to relax, your mind to calm, and to bring your soul to the fore. Please begin. So here we are, right now, this morning, and we have talked about physical death, death to the body. Sometimes it's pretty scary. Oftentimes fearful. So much uncertainty. And of course, that sense of loss. So let us focus on another approach that might be helpful. Would you simply go inside, move into the inner you, and when you move into that inner peace at the very center of your being, just move into that inner peace and just breathe in and out of that peace. Feel the breath coming in and feel the breath going out. Just experience that inner peace. When you are in the inner peace, you're very much into your soul self. I'll just say it again. When you are in your inner peace, you are in the soul self. And would you simply say to yourself, this is me. This is who I am. Just say it again. This is me. This is me. This is my soul self. And would you notice how your soul self is different than your physical body? I'll say that again. Would you notice how your soul self is different than your physical body? It's so easy to confuse the two. For so many times we feel that what happens to the body is what is happening to me. We confuse what is happening to the body with what is happening to me being the soul. Would you just take a moment to see the difference between something that happens to your body and something that happens to your soul? Can you clearly see that they are two different experiences? That what happens to your body is not necessarily happening to your soul. It's very important to know that you are a soul that has a body, that you are not the body. I'll say it again. Very important to know that you are a soul, an eternal being that has a body, but is not the body. It's very important to understand this, not only from a traditional religious viewpoint, but from a higher spiritual awareness. I'll say it again. You are a soul that has a body, but you, the soul, are not the body. Yes, it is very easy to identify as a body when there is pain, when there is mental and emotional duress. It's very easy to identify with the body. It is this clarity between who I am as a soul and what I have as a body that is important for us to understand. The more we do so, the better will we understand a traditional religious view of life and a more advanced spiritual view. Not only today, but during the week, I ask you to clearly see the difference between who you are as a soul and what you have as a body. And allow this clarification to give meaning to today's teaching as well as to next week's teaching from the soul's perspective. May we continue to support and help each other during these times.
Deep within, peace resides, faith abounds, and love abides. The light shines bright to illumine love without, love within. I honor thee, I honor thee. Namaste.
May I simply say that it is an honor to share these teachings with you. We have to be able to see not just the joyous moments, but the difficult ones as well, with greater understanding and with greater love. I trust that today's teaching and next week's and maybe even another one will help us to have that greater understanding and that greater love. Namaste, dear Blessed One. Namaste.